Before we dive into this thrilling story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest uploads. Your support keeps us going. Now, let's get into it. I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. It wasn't my alarm, and it wasn't a call. Just a steady, persistent buzz that sliced through the soft morning haze like a blade. For a split second, I didn't remember what day it was. My eyes were crusty, and my body felt heavy with the kind of exhaustion that came not from lack of sleep but from months of planning, hoping, worrying, perfecting. Then it hit me. Today was my wedding day. My heart skipped, fluttered, and then soared. I reached for the phone with a shaky smile on my lips, expecting a sweet message from Ethan, something cheesy but heartfelt, something that would make me blush and roll my eyes and remember why I was marrying him in the first place. But the name on the screen wasn't his. Catherine Cross. His mother. I frowned. Catherine had never messaged me directly before. Not unless she wanted something changed, something toned down, something more appropriate for the family name. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the notification. Then, curiosity got the better of me, and I tapped it open. We've taken your dress. The venue is cancelled. Ethan knows what's best. Don't make a scene. Just accept it. I blinked. No, I had read that wrong. I read it again. We've taken your dress. The venue is cancelled. Ethan knows what's best. Don't make a scene. Just accept it. The world tilted. My lungs forgot how to breathe. The letters danced and twisted on the screen like they were mocking me. My wedding. My wedding was today. My dress was in the closet. The venue was booked. The guests were invited. The money was paid. Ethan had kissed me goodnight just hours ago, whispering, "Tomorrow will be perfect." And now, what? This was a joke. A cruel, twisted joke. I sat up so fast my head spun. The blanket tangled around my legs, but I kicked it off, swung my feet onto the cold hardwood floor, and stood on shaking legs. My fingers trembled as I dialed Ethan's number. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Again. Straight to voicemail. I tried Lena. No answer. Tried again. Still nothing. I called the venue. A woman picked up after several rings, her voice tight and hesitant. "Hi, this is Ava Kingston. The bride. I just received a strange message from my future mother-in-law. She said the wedding was cancelled?" There was a pause. Then the woman exhaled. Yes. I'm so sorry. Mr. Cross called early this morning and said the event was no longer happening. We tried to reach out for confirmation, but..." I stopped listening. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the bed. I staggered to the closet. The dress bag was gone. Gone. The shoes I'd picked out 6 months ago, the ones that had taken forever to find, the ones that perfectly matched the shade of ivory in my veil, gone. The veil. Gone. I checked the garment rack in the guest room where my backup accessories were. Empty. My eyes burned. My chest was tight. But more than anything, I felt rage. Not confusion. Not grief. Rage. They planned this. They waited until the last moment, knowing I wouldn't have time to react. They thought I'd be too humiliated, too heartbroken, too stunned to do anything but cry in a heap on the floor. They thought they'd broken me. They were wrong. I grabbed the first clothes I could find, black jeans, a tank top, and a hoodie that still smelled like my old apartment. No makeup. No jewelry. No time. I grabbed my keys and left. I drove on autopilot, my knuckles white around the steering wheel, my foot pressing harder than it should on the gas pedal. My destination was obvious. Not Ethan's. No. If he had gone along with this, I didn't need to see him, not yet. I needed to see her. Catherine Cross lived in a manicured mansion behind a wrought iron gate and 3 layers of security. Her house was the kind of cold, glass-coated perfection that belonged in magazines, not real life. I didn't even have to buzz. The gate was open. Too easy. My car screeched to a stop in the driveway. I slammed the door and marched up the marble steps. She opened the door before I could even knock. As if she had been waiting. Her expression didn't shift. No surprise. No guilt. Just a soft, tired sigh and the slight tilt of her head like I was a child throwing a tantrum she had long since grown bored of. "You need to calm down," she said. Calm down. I was standing in her doorway, in sweatpants and a hoodie, on what was supposed to be the most beautiful day of my life, and this woman, this puppet master, was telling me to calm down. "Where's my dress?" I said, my voice low. Catherine shrugged. "Gone. And you won't need it. The wedding is off. You don't have the power to cancel my wedding. Ethan made the call. He's doing what's best. I stared at her, daring her to blink first. She didn't. Of course she didn't. Where is he? I asked. Busy. I wanted to scream. Wanted to tear down her polished chandelier and throw it through her oversized window. But I didn't. I turned and left. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I didn't go home. I didn't cry. I didn't call a friend. I didn't even breathe properly until I got to the venue. I don't know what I expected. Maybe to see it empty, locked down, forgotten. Maybe to find a sign on the door confirming the cancellation. Instead, I saw cars. Dozens of them. Pulling into the parking lot like everything was normal. Guests. Dressed in pastels, clutching envelopes and gifts, smiling. Smiling. The venue was decorated. Exactly as I had designed. The arrangements, the arch, the lighting, every single detail I had agonized over for months, it was all there. My legs moved without permission. I walked toward the entrance. Nobody stopped me. People I knew waved. Someone said, "You look great," with a wink, like I was just being fashionably late. I stepped inside. And saw her. Lena. In my dress. Standing at the altar. With Ethan. My vision went white. My body froze. My brain refused to compute what my eyes were seeing. Lena. My best friend. The woman who helped me pick out that exact dress, who cried when I showed her the final fitting, who toasted to my happiness 2 nights ago during the rehearsal dinner. She was glowing. Radiant. Like the perfect bride. Like me. I didn't move. Couldn't move. Couldn't think. And then it hit me all at once. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't last minute. This had been planned. Ethan had let me plan the wedding. Had let me spend money. Had let me write vows. Had watched me cry over centerpieces. Had kissed me and held me and told me I was his future. All while planning to replace me. Like I was a placeholder. A training model. An error to be corrected. They were going to let me wake up on my wedding day and vanish. No confrontation. No explanation. Just a message. They thought I'd fade away. They thought they'd erase me. They didn't know who they were dealing with. I took a step forward. Then another. People started whispering. I kept walking. Toward the front. Toward the altar. Lena looked up. Her face changed. Confusion. Guilt. Panic. Ethan turned. His face went blank. Then pale. Catherine was already standing, rushing forward like she could stop me from reaching them. Her hand shot out. "You need to leave," she hissed. I smiled. Actually smiled. "I think I'll stay." Gasps. More whispers. People were shifting in their seats, nudging each other. Recognition spreading. I looked straight into Catherine's eyes. And for the first time, I saw fear. She had no idea. None of them did. But they were about to find out. Because this wasn't just a ruined wedding. This was the beginning of something much, much bigger. The moment I said, "I think I'll stay," everything around me fractured. Not literally, but it might as well have. I could feel the tension ripple outward like shockwaves. Catherine's eyes darted to the guests, to the altar, back to me. She was calculating, always calculating. She had spent her whole life controlling narratives, manipulating people, turning every situation into a story where she played the victim or the mastermind. But she hadn't anticipated this chapter. I watched the cracks spread across her porcelain composure. "I don't know what you think you're doing, Ava," she said under her breath, teeth clenched, voice sugar-coated with threat. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing," I replied calmly. "You see, Catherine, I'm not here to protest. I'm here to observe. To witness. To give you exactly the moment you were praying I'd be too broken to face." She stiffened, but didn't speak. I turned my gaze to the altar. Lena had gone completely still. Her hands were clenched around her bouquet so tightly the white roses were bending under pressure. Her eyes were wide and glassy, like she was trying not to cry, or scream. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Ethan looked like someone had punched him in the stomach and he was still trying to pretend it didn't hurt. Good. I kept walking. Slow, measured steps down the aisle I was supposed to walk hours ago, in a white dress, to stand beside the man who was now pretending he didn't recognize me. People were whispering louder now. Some stood up. A few pulled out their phones. This was no longer a private embarrassment. It was a spectacle. And I was about to set the stage on fire. Catherine moved again to block me, but I turned to her with a look so sharp it stopped her in her tracks. "You wanted a perfect day," I said, my voice low and lethal. "Let's give them a perfect story," she faltered. I stepped into the front row, my feet just inches from the altar now. I took a moment to look around the room. Familiar faces stared back, coworkers, distant relatives, family friends. People who had RSVP'd to my wedding. People who had sent me gifts and congratulated me and toasted to our love. And not one of them had questioned why the bride wasn't me. The betrayal cut deeper with every second. I looked toward the bridal party. And there she was. Sarah. My maid of honor. My closest friend. And her face said it all. She knew. Her lips trembled, her eyes shiny with guilt, her whole posture one of a woman who was slowly being crushed by the weight of her secrets. I didn't say anything to her. Not yet. My eyes snapped back to Ethan. He finally stepped forward. Ava, he began, his voice painfully calm, like this was just a misunderstanding, a minor inconvenience at the wrong time. Let's not do this here. Here? I echoed, tilting my head. Oh, you mean the wedding you planned in secret behind my back? With my friend? Using my venue, my dress, and my guest list? A collective gasp. Lena looked like she might pass out. We didn't. She started, her voice high and shaky. I cut her off. You didn't what, Lena? Didn't sleep with my fiancé? Didn't stand at the altar in my dress? Didn't lie to me while helping me plan the wedding you were always going to steal? More gasps. A few phones were lifted now. Cameras on. Faces serious. Ethan swallowed hard. This isn't the time, he said. I turned to him fully. No? Because you thought the time was this morning when you had your mother send me a text canceling my wedding. His eyes flickered. I raised my voice. You thought I'd disappear. That I'd cry and run and hide and let you rewrite reality. You underestimated me, Ethan. He flinched. Good. I pulled my phone from my pocket. What are you? Catherine started, stepping forward. Playing back the truth, I said. I tapped the screen. Catherine's voice blasted through the speakers. We've taken your dress. The venue is cancelled. Ethan knows what's best. Don't make a scene. Just accept it. Gasps again. But I wasn't finished. I hit another recording. Ethan's voice crackling but clear. Babe, I'm sorry, but my mom is right. You're just not good enough. Lena is better suited for me. She'll be a proper wife. The room erupted. A woman dropped her champagne flute. Someone cursed. Chairs shifted. Lena stepped back, horrified. She looked at Ethan like he just slapped her. Catherine's jaw was clenched so tight I thought she might shatter her own teeth. I took a deep breath, letting the moment marinate. Then I walked up the last step and stood on the altar, next to them, face to face. Still want him? I asked Lena quietly, my voice slicing through the noise. She said nothing. I turned to Ethan. How long? I asked. He blinked. I stepped closer. How long have you been planning this? He didn't answer. Lena opened her mouth. It just happened. I laughed, sharp and loud. You don't accidentally wear another woman's wedding dress and show up at her ceremony. You don't just happen to orchestrate an entire betrayal. Catherine stepped in, her voice tight and low. Stop making a scene. You're embarrassing yourself. I looked at her with a quiet, deadly calm. You planned this, didn't you? She didn't deny it. I smiled. You know what, Catherine? I said, leaning in. I was ready to be the bigger person. To marry your son. To pretend your little jabs and insults didn't matter. But now... I paused, letting her feel the shift in the air. Now I'm going to destroy you. She blinked. For the first time, she looked unsure. Ethan opened his mouth, tried to salvage it. It's over, okay? Let's just move on. I pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Actually, no. Let's talk about what happens next. I unfolded it slowly. This is the financial contract you signed, Ethan. Remember? The one that outlines shared responsibility for all wedding costs unless there's a mutual cancellation? His face went blank. Catherine stiffened. $72,000, I said, reading the number aloud. You owe me. In full. You're lying, Catherine said. I handed the paper to a woman in the front row, my cousin, Rebecca, who just happened to be a lawyer. It's signed. Legal. Binding. I turned to the guests. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I'm so glad you could witness the Cross family show their true colors. If you'd like to keep your gifts, I'd recommend collecting them before I file for fraud. Murmurs. Shouts. Chairs scraping. Catherine tried to speak, but I raised my hand. No more lies. No more performances. You thought I'd vanish. Instead, I showed up. You tried to erase me. But you made me unforgettable. I stepped back from the altar, calm now, steady. Ethan looked broken. Lena was already backing away, her eyes darting toward the exit. Catherine stood frozen, her empire cracking at the seams. And me? I walked down the aisle. The one I was supposed to walk down as a bride. I walked it anyway. Not to marry someone, but to bury them. Because this ceremony wasn't mine. But the next one, the reckoning, that would be. When I stepped out of that venue, the sun was blinding. For a moment, the brightness almost felt cruel. The world had kept turning while mine had flipped upside down. Guests scrambled behind me, buzzing like shaken hornets. Some were yelling, some were whispering, some were taking pictures. The air felt thick with judgment, sympathy, and raw, unfiltered chaos. But I felt nothing. No shaking. No tears. Just silence. The kind of silence that only comes after something inside you breaks so cleanly, it doesn't even bleed. I walked calmly to my car. Got in. Turned the engine. And drove. No destination. No plan. Just a stretch of road and the fury that hummed inside me like a live wire. They had taken everything, my wedding, my dignity, my so-called best friend, my fiancé, my trust in everyone I loved. But they hadn't taken me. They hadn't taken my brain. My fire. My ability to strike back. Because what they didn't understand was that I had spent the last 5 years in the world of corporate PR and crisis management. Cleaning up messes. Controlling narratives. Studying people, systems, contracts. I knew how to dismantle reputations like clockwork. And now I had one target, the Cross family. I pulled into a gas station parking lot, cut the engine, and stared ahead, gripping the steering wheel with both hands. The fury hadn't subsided, it had evolved. Sharpened. No more reacting. It was time to plan. I called Jake. He picked up on the third ring, his voice groggy. Ava? What? I need you, I said. Now. A beat of silence. Then, where are you? 20 minutes out of town. I'll drop a pin. Come alone. Jake Walters wasn't just any friend. He was the guy I'd known since college, the one who once pulled me out of a 3-day mental spiral during finals week and got me to breathe again. He'd become a lawyer now. Sharp. Quiet. Brutally efficient. He didn't ask questions. He showed up. I sat on the hood of my car with a half-drunk energy drink in hand when he arrived. His car pulled in beside mine, and he stepped out, his suit jacket slung over one shoulder, tie loosened, eyes squinting against the light. I'm guessing your wedding didn't go as planned, he said carefully. I gave him a flat look. He raised his hands. Too soon. I stood. I need you to help me ruin them. Jake blinked. Not out of spite, I clarified. Out of necessity. You're going to want to hear the whole story before you decide if this is about revenge or justice. So I told him. Everything. From the text to the dress to the hijack ceremony. I showed him the recordings. The contract Ethan signed. The guest list, the invoices, the timeline. I even told him about Lena and Sarah. I laid it all bare, not because I needed sympathy but because I needed clarity. Precision. Jake listened. And when I finished, he leaned back on his car and exhaled a long, low breath. You weren't just replaced, he said. You were erased. This was premeditated. This wasn't a breakup. It was a takedown. Exactly. He folded his arms. Okay. First, legal. You said you and Ethan signed a financial premarital agreement? 3 months ago. He insisted. Said it was smart. Catherine pushed for it. And you still have a copy? I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. Jake skimmed it. Clause 17. I said. If the wedding is cancelled unilaterally by either party, they owe the other full reimbursement for any costs incurred leading up to the day, including emotional distress damages if proof of malicious intent is found. Jake gave a low whistle. That's generous. It was my idea, I said coolly. Ethan didn't read past the title. Catherine was too arrogant to care. Jake smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the smile of a shark who smelled blood in the water. All right, he said. Then we have a case. But that's only step 1. You want to go public? Not yet. Not loud. Not until I control the narrative. He nodded. Media control. Reputation damage. Crisis construction. I want it clean, I said. I don't want screaming matches on talk shows. I want reputation rot. Subtle. Irreversible. Jake's eyes glinted. You want it classy. I want it surgical. And that's how the plan was born. We met every day for the next week. Quietly. Privately. No posts. No drama. I ghosted my own accounts, blocked Ethan, ignored Sarah's string of desperate texts, and let Lena stew in the silence she deserved. The Cross family thought they had gotten away with it. That's what made it perfect. We started by building the dossier. Jake contacted former employees of the Cross Foundation, people Catherine had fired, mistreated, underpaid. There were dozens. Some of them still had receipts, emails, voice notes, NDAs signed under duress. We collected everything. Simultaneously, I started tracing their business ties. Catherine had several companies she invested in. Ethan had business deals lined up, and Lena, poor Lena, had just landed a brand deal with a luxury wellness startup thanks to her new society status. Too bad the photoshoots were still in progress. Too bad the PR team hadn't done a full background check. Too bad I had the full story, and knew exactly where to leak it when the time was right. But I wasn't rushing. Because before any of that, I needed something else, confirmation that what happened to me wasn't just betrayal, but orchestrated character assassination. And for that, I needed proof from inside. So I called Sarah. No text. No email. A call. She answered on the first ring. Ava. She breathed. Oh my God, Don't. Not yet, I said. If you want to make this right, meet me. Alone. She hesitated. Are you going to scream at me? No, I said. But I might never speak to you again unless you tell me the truth. She agreed. We met at a cafe on the edge of town. No makeup. No friends. Just the two of us. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She wore oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap like she was hiding from the world. I didn't care. You knew, I said once we sat. Tears welled in her eyes. Yes. For how long? A few weeks, she whispered. Catherine approached me. She said Ethan was reconsidering. That Lena was more suitable. I stared at her. And you didn't tell me? She threatened me, Sarah said, her voice cracking. She said if I said anything, she'd destroy my career. She owns the PR firm I work for. I have student debt. I have nothing without that job. I exhaled slowly. Did you know they were going to replace me the day of? Sarah looked down. No. Did you help them get my dress? No. That must have been Lena. Or Catherine. I leaned back. And Ethan? He was in on it. Not from the start, I don't think. But once Catherine presented it as a solution, he agreed. He said it was cleaner to switch things quietly than to call off the wedding and deal with the fallout. I laughed bitterly. Cleaner. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. I was a coward. You deserve better. I stood up. I know. I left her at that table. That night, Jake and I finalized Phase 1. The legal strike. A formal notice was drafted and sent to Ethan and Catherine, demanding financial compensation under the signed agreement, listing damages, and attaching a preliminary motion to sue for intentional infliction of emotional distress, breach of contract, and reputational sabotage. The Cross family received it in silence. No statement. No response. Which told me one thing: they were rattled. But I wasn't done. This wasn't revenge. This was the prelude. The calm before the real storm. The thing about stories is, who tells them matters more than what happened. I'd learned that in the war rooms of corporate PR, truth alone never wins. It needs packaging, precision, and the right kind of silence to let the noise implode on itself. The Cross family had orchestrated a betrayal so theatrical, so publicly humiliating, they expected the shame to silence me. What they didn't expect was that I knew how to weaponize a narrative. So I did. The moment our legal notice went out, I started preparing the battlefield. Not the courtroom, Jake had that covered. I was preparing the court of public opinion. I created a private war room in my apartment, cork boards, laptop screens, voice notes, timeline grids. There was no assistant, no team, just me, red-eyed at 3 a.m., tearing apart their image piece by piece. I didn't plan to go viral. I planned to go viral quietly, the kind of quiet that explodes before anyone knows where it started. I began with the ghost bride. That was the name I gave her, me, but not by name. A woman whose wedding was stolen. Who woke up to find her life erased by her fiancé, her best friend, and her future in-laws. I created a Reddit account with a throwaway name, and wrote the story in pieces, each part detailed, raw, anonymous. No names. Just feelings. Betrayal. Shock. The text. The venue. The replacement. I didn't even need to exaggerate. The truth was grotesque enough. Within hours it took off. By the next morning, the post had hit front page. Hashtag stolen bride. Hashtag runaway fiancé. Hashtag wedding hijack. People were horrified. Furious. Obsessed. TikTok creators began narrating the thread. Twitter reposted it with, "She's her. Period. Energy." Someone even made a dramatic reenactment video using AI voices. It spiraled fast. But I stayed quiet. Not a single post from my real account. Not even a like. Because the best trap is the one they walk into thinking they're safe. By day 3, one of the major wedding blogs picked it up. Then a tabloid. Then a journalist reached out through a DM to the anonymous account, asking if the ghost bride would be willing to share more. I gave her more. Carefully. Strategically. One detail. The replacement bride wore the original bride's dress. That lit a fire. Dozens of women online began analyzing wedding photos from recent society weddings in New York, trying to piece together who it was. It didn't take long before someone found Lena's Instagram. Her latest post, dated the day after my non-wedding, showed her in my dress. Same lace. Same train. Even the stitching on the bodice was visible. The comment section exploded. Wait, is this the dress? Isn't this Ava Kingston's dress? Didn't she pick this from Valentina Rose's exclusive collection? It was custom made. Boom. The story had a face. People started tagging me. Messaging me. My name was trending. A video compilation surfaced, of me and Ethan, clips from our engagement party, Lena in the background. The internet did what it always does, it dug. Meanwhile, I let them. Catherine Cross released a statement 2 days later. Polished. Cold. She called the online rumors inflammatory fiction designed to defame a private family moment. Big mistake. She spoke like a villain. Dismissive. Arrogant. A viral tweet called her the final boss of mother-in-law horror stories. That alone racked up 500,000 likes. Then came the email leak. No one knew who did it. But somehow, a chain of emails between Catherine and Ethan surfaced online. In them, Catherine wrote, "She's not cross material. Too emotional, too ambitious. Lena will obey." That line burned across the internet like wildfire. Obey. As if Ethan needed a wife who took orders, not a partner. The next day, the wellness brand that had signed Lena released a statement saying they were reviewing their partnership. Her sponsorship was dropped 24 hours later. Collateral damage. Not that I cared. Ethan went radio silent. But the internet didn't. Old college classmates began sharing stories about how Ethan had a reputation for getting others to do his work. How Catherine had paid for professors. How Lena had always circled him like a shadow, even when we were together. A picture began to form. Not just of a betrayal, but of a pattern. Of entitlement. Control. Inheritance, not love. Jake kept feeding me legal updates. The Crosses hadn't responded to our filing. Likely stalling. Likely hoping the story would burn out. It didn't. Because I wasn't done yet. The next move was the clip. I had debated it. A lot. It was harsh. Intimate. But necessary. I had recorded a voice note 2 weeks before the wedding, me and Ethan, sitting on the balcony, talking about our vows. In it, he told me, "Catherine's a lot, but she'll love you once she sees how strong you are. That's what I love about you. You don't bend for anyone." The same man who later called me not good enough. I posted it anonymously, but added a caption. This was 2 weeks before he replaced me at the altar. The contrast was brutal. People were enraged. And that's when the influencers came in. A few had followed me professionally. I'd worked on their brand deals. They knew the industry. And once they realized what had happened, they backed me, publicly. One posted, "I've worked with Ava Kingston. She's brilliant, kind, and no one deserves what happened to her. This story isn't just drama, it's real life, and it's horrifying." Another stitched the clip and said, "This is why women don't trust. Because this kind of betrayal doesn't just hurt, it erases you." Catherine tried to pivot. She did an interview. A terrible, terrible interview. She wore pearls and a funeral-colored dress. Sat stiffly across from a well-known anchor and tried to paint me as unstable, obsessive, difficult to work with. It backfired immediately. Clips of her smiling while saying, "Well, sometimes people just aren't marriage material," went viral with clown music overlays. One creator edited her interview with side-by-side footage of Lena looking like a terrified ghost bride at the altar. The internet dubbed it the Cross Cringe Era. Catherine had no idea how to fight an invisible army of phones and memes and TikToks. And Ethan? He finally posted. A black screen. One sentence. "I never intended to hurt anyone." He disabled comments within an hour. Jake called that night, laughing into the phone. "They're imploding. They're reacting," I said. "Which means they're losing." He hummed. "You want to hit again?" "Not yet. Not loud. Just one more whisper." So I whispered. I contacted the board of Cross and Associates, Catherine's pride and joy. A family-founded company that held billions in real estate, finance, and private capital. I sent an anonymous tip. Attached to it were the leaked emails. And a detailed report of the public backlash, the sponsorship drop, the pending legal suit. I knew someone on that board. A woman named Elise Tran. We'd crossed paths at a summit 2 years ago. I remembered she hated Catherine with the quiet precision of a woman who was once humiliated and never forgot. The next morning, the board issued a press statement. Effective immediately, Mrs. Catherine Cross will step down from all active leadership roles pending internal review. The headline read, "The Fall of a Society Queen." I watched it all from my apartment window, sipping tea like a war general who hadn't even moved her queen yet. This wasn't just a narrative war. This was a slow, methodical detonation. And I wasn't even close to done. The courthouse didn't look like much from the outside, just a dull, rectangular building with flaking gray paint and a flagpole that creaked every time the wind moved. But inside that ordinary structure, the Cross family was about to bleed. Jake and I arrived early. I wore black, not for mourning, but for power. Tailored blazers, slim heels, a ponytail pulled so tight it made me look half dangerous. My makeup was precise. Understated. Ruthless. Jake reviewed the file one last time, flipping through tabs like a surgeon preparing for a high-stakes procedure. "They're still stalling," he said. "Haven't submitted a formal rebuttal. They might try to settle today." "They won't," I said. "They think they can still win this." Jake smirked. "Then they're stupider than I thought." We walked into the courtroom just as the clerk called the session. It wasn't a trial yet, just a hearing for our motion to compel payment per the premarital financial contract Ethan had signed months ago. But because of who the Crosses were, and because of the wildfire that had consumed the internet over the last 2 weeks, the room was packed. Reporters. Interns. A few law students pretending to take notes while live tweeting. Even a wedding blogger with pink hair sat in the back row, eyes shining like she was watching the season finale of a scandalous drama. Catherine arrived first, flanked by 2 attorneys and dressed like a widow from a prestige period film. Black silk. Sunglasses. A fake tremble in her hands as she handed her documents to her lawyer. It would have been convincing if she hadn't paused to flash a tight-lipped smile at a photographer outside minutes earlier. Ethan followed. Alone. His face was pale, drawn, like someone who hadn't slept in days. He didn't look at me. Didn't look at anyone. Just sat quietly at the table next to Catherine, eyes down, as if disappearing might erase his involvement. I didn't give him the satisfaction. When the judge walked in, everyone stood. Then we began. Our case was simple. Ethan had signed a contract agreeing to reimburse me for all wedding-related expenses if the event was cancelled without mutual consent. The wedding had not only been cancelled, it had been replaced, with another woman, in the same venue, using my dress, guest list, and arrangements. Jake laid it out calmly, like he was reading bedtime stories. Then he dropped the recording. The judge, an older woman with an arched brow and a no-nonsense demeanor, listened without blinking as Ethan's voice played. "You're just not good enough. Lena is better suited. She'll be a proper wife." Then Catherine's. "We've taken your dress. The venue is cancelled. Don't make a scene." There was a silence so thick it made my skin buzz. The judge looked at Catherine. "Did you send that message?" Catherine's lawyer objected to the relevance. The judge overruled it. Catherine cleared her throat and said, "Yes. But it was a private family matter. Not under contract law." The judge replied sharply. "Especially not when the message indicates deliberate sabotage of a binding agreement." Jake handed over printed invoices, bank statements, and correspondence with vendors, all timestamped before the date of cancellation. Then came the final nail, a sworn statement from Sarah, submitted that morning, admitting she had been warned by Catherine not to inform me about the replacement ceremony. My former maid of honor had folded, finally, like a limp paper crane. The judge flipped through the evidence with methodical boredom, like she had seen too many liars before breakfast. Then she turned to Ethan. "Do you have anything to say, Mr. Cross?" He looked up. Briefly. Then he did something that surprised me. He stood. And spoke. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way," he said softly. "I was pressured. I panicked. I didn't want to face the fallout. My mother thought." The judge raised a hand. "Did you voluntarily sign the contract?" He hesitated. "Yes." "Did you cancel the wedding without mutual agreement from Ms. Kingston?" "Yes." "Did you host an event, functionally identical to the scheduled wedding, with a different bride, in the same venue, on the same date?" "Yes." She closed the folder. "Then your intentions are irrelevant." A beat passed. Then her ruling came. "Under the terms of the contract, And given the extensive evidence of deliberate deceit, Mr. Cross is ordered to pay Ms. Kingston the full amount of $72,694 in damages and incurred costs. Additional penalties for emotional distress and punitive damages will be considered upon further review. I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. I just nodded. Jake leaned closer. That's not just a win. That's a death sentence, for their brand. Catherine looked like someone had slapped her. Her jaw clenched so hard her cheek twitched. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered something, but she waved him off, her gaze locked on me now. She stood. She actually stood in the middle of the courtroom and addressed me directly. You think you've won? I blinked. No. I know I've survived. There's a difference. She took a step closer before the bailiff intervened. I will rebuild everything you destroyed. I stared at her, calm, clean, detached. I didn't destroy you, I said. You did that to yourself. I just turned on the lights. Ethan didn't look at me as he left. But Lena did. She was standing outside the courtroom doors when I walked out. Her hair was tied back in a sloppy bun. Her eyes rimmed red. She was alone. I didn't know it would end like this, she said, voice trembling. I paused. Did you think it would end in roses and champagne? I asked. With a ring and a fairy tale? You betrayed me. I was promised. I don't care. She flinched. I didn't do this to hurt you, she whispered. No, I said. You did it to help yourself. Same thing. Lena stepped back. And I walked past her without another word. Outside, the press swarmed. I said nothing. Jake guided me through the chaos like a shadow, shielding me from flashbulbs and questions and shouted demands for comment. We got into the car. Shut the doors. Silence. Then Jake turned to me. You ready for the next part? I nodded. Because the courtroom was over. But the real end hadn't come yet. That part was personal. And it would come quietly, like frost creeping over glass, undeniable, irreversible. They had torn down my life with fake smiles and silk gloves. But I rebuilt mine with steel. It didn't happen overnight. Rebuilding never does. In the days after the courtroom ruling, the noise faded into a different kind of silence. Not the suffocating silence of betrayal, or the electric silence of rage. This was the silence of freedom. The kind that follows destruction. The kind that gives you space to breathe again. I didn't make any public statements. I didn't need to. The world had already made one for me. After the verdict, Cross and Associates hemorrhaged clients. Half of their PR retainers dropped within a week. Catherine attempted to salvage what was left by issuing a remorseful letter to stakeholders, but no one bought it. The words were too rehearsed, too clinical. Investors didn't like volatility, and Catherine had become synonymous with it. A month later, the board formally removed her from all executive roles. Quietly. Without ceremony. Ethan tried to recover, too. I heard whispers of him joining a boutique finance firm in Chicago. He made a LinkedIn post about new beginnings and lessons learned. The comments section was brutal. No one forgot. No one forgave. Lena disappeared from social media entirely. One day, her accounts were just gone. Deleted. Wiped clean. Someone said they saw her boarding a flight to Portugal. Someone else claimed she was in a cabin in Vermont. I didn't care enough to verify. Sarah moved to another city. We never spoke again. Not because I hated her, but because there was nothing left to say. Some betrayals don't scream. They just leave echoes you don't want to hear anymore. And me? I moved. Not to escape. To evolve. A new city. A new apartment overlooking a river that didn't care who I used to be. I painted the walls myself. Bought plants. Burned old photos. Donated the wedding gifts I never returned. I got a job at a private crisis strategy firm, ironically enough, helping other women navigate public trauma. I didn't advertise my experience. But they knew. One of my clients, a celebrity going through a vicious custody battle, looked at me once after a long session and said, "You don't flinch. Like you've been through worse." I just smiled. Because I had. And I survived. One night, 6 months after it all, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside, a simple note on cream stationery. You were right. About all of it. I just wanted something that wasn't mine, because I didn't believe I could make anything on my own. I'm sorry. It wasn't signed. But I knew it was from Lena. I didn't respond. I didn't keep the letter either. I burned it over a glass of wine and watched the flames curl around her apology like a ribbon. I never heard from Ethan again. Except once. A brief email. Subject: Can we talk? I read it. Deleted it. Blocked the address. And I never looked back. Because the truth was, I never needed closure. Not from him. Not from any of them. They had taken pieces of my past. But I had already reclaimed my future. A year later, I stood in front of a packed ballroom, dressed in white again, not a wedding dress this time, but a suit. Clean. Sharp. The kind of white that doesn't ask for permission to be bold. I was there to speak at a women's summit. Topic: reclaiming control. I didn't use notes. I didn't need to. I looked out at the faces, executives, artists, survivors, leaders, and I told them my story. Not with names. Not with scandal. But with truth. I spoke of losing everything you planned for, and realizing none of it mattered if you couldn't even see who you were beneath it. I spoke of betrayal, and how it's never about the moment they break you, but what you do in the moment after. The applause was quiet at first. Then it grew. Standing. Full. Raw. Afterward, a young woman approached me in the hallway, eyes wide. I followed your story, she said, voice shaking. Online. Everyone did. But seeing you here now, it's like you're the version of me I want to become. I put a hand on her shoulder. You already are, I said. You just haven't burned the wrong things yet. She laughed. She cried. And I walked away knowing that the life I had now wasn't new. It was the one that had always been mine. Waiting. Buried under compromise, under fear, under the weight of people who wanted to dim me to their level of comfort. But I rose. I chose myself. And that was the loudest revenge of all. No screaming. No bitterness. Just success, peace, and the terrifying kind of happiness that comes when no one owns your story but you. Now, when people ask about the wedding that never was, I just smile. Not because it didn't hurt. Not because I've forgotten. But because I look at the life I've built and realize. They didn't destroy me. They just freed me. There are stories that entertain us, and then there are stories that awaken something in us, stories that tap into the deepest fears we carry, the betrayal we dread, and the strength we never knew we had. The story of Ava Kingston is one of those rare narratives that does not just deliver justice, it reflects back a mirror of who we are when everything is stripped away. Beneath the layers of scandal, revenge, and calculated power plays, Ava's journey teaches us profound lessons about human nature, resilience, identity, and what it truly means to reclaim your life. At first glance, it may appear to be a story of revenge. But it's so much more than that. It's a masterclass in emotional survival. It's a story about finding power in powerlessness, and choosing dignity in the face of humiliation. Perhaps the first and most striking lesson is that betrayal is never the end of the story, it's the beginning of clarity. When Ava woke up on the morning of her wedding to a message that her dress had been taken and the venue had been cancelled, it wasn't just a logistical nightmare, it was an existential ambush. Her identity, her future, her love, everything she had invested in emotionally and financially was pulled out from under her in a single moment. But instead of collapsing, she saw through the illusion. The people she loved had been betraying her for weeks, if not months. And once the illusion shattered, she didn't reach for pity or scream in self-defense. She chose observation. She paid attention. She walked into the betrayal with her eyes wide open. The lesson here is that sometimes pain clears the fog. What you thought was love might have been dependence. What you called friendship might have been proximity. And what you saw as a life path might have been a trap laid by other people's expectations. Betrayal isn't just a wound, it's a revelation. And once you see, you can never unsee. Another powerful lesson is that silence can be stronger than spectacle. Ava never screamed. She never begged. She never pleaded for closure. She didn't chase after Ethan or try to convince anyone to take her side. Instead, she collected herself. She processed. She planned. In a culture where the loudest voice often dominates the room, Ava's silence was deafening. It was focused. It was dangerous in the best way. She taught us that emotional control is not about suppression, it's about direction. You don't have to explode to fight back. Sometimes the most powerful response is to rebuild in plain sight, and let your actions speak for themselves. Her silence wasn't passive. It was surgical. She moved with intent, making every word, every appearance, every legal document count. She didn't need to win an argument. She redefined the battlefield. The story also gives us an essential reminder about identity. It must never be outsourced. Ava's entire world had been built around an identity that others approved of. The future wife, the daughter-in-law, the friend who was agreeable and compliant. But the moment that identity was stripped away by betrayal, she was left alone with one question: who am I without them? And that's where she discovered the truth. She was not just a bride. She was a strategist. A leader. A woman capable of rising from ruins with a voice more powerful than any title she had before. Our society often teaches us to define ourselves through relationships, especially women. But Ava's story forces us to ask, what do you do when those roles dissolve? Who are you when there is no one left to validate your worth? The answer isn't easy, but it's liberating. You become yourself. Not the version curated for others, but the version that stands even when everything else falls. Then there's the lesson about revenge, not as cruelty, but as reclamation. Ava didn't seek vengeance in the traditional sense. She didn't set fires. She didn't destroy lives out of malice. What she did was claim back what was stolen: her voice, her story, her worth. She didn't want Ethan back. She didn't want to humiliate Lena. She didn't want Catherine's kingdom. She wanted the truth to be heard, the damage to be acknowledged, and her future to be returned to her. This is a crucial distinction. True revenge isn't about inflicting pain. It's about removing the power from those who thought they could hurt you without consequences. Ava didn't just expose the Cross family, she exposed the system that enabled them: wealth, image, manipulation. And she didn't need to destroy it all. She just had to show the world what it really was. Because sometimes justice doesn't come in the form of punishment. It comes in the form of clarity that can't be unseen. There's also a painful, yet empowering lesson about loyalty. Ava was betrayed not only by her fiancé but by her best friend. The woman who was supposed to stand beside her, hold her hand through the vows, and witness the most sacred moment of her life, stood by and let her be erased. Sarah's betrayal hurt Ava in a different way. More personal. More intimate. But what Ava did was extraordinary. She didn't let the betrayal make her bitter. She didn't become paranoid or suspicious of everyone around her. She understood something rare. Sometimes people betray you not because they hate you, but because they're afraid. Because they're weak. Because they lack the courage to stand where you stand. That doesn't make it okay. But it does make it survivable. Ava didn't forgive Sarah. But she also didn't let Sarah's cowardice become her burden to carry. Forgiveness is not always a reunion. Sometimes it's just letting go without picking up the rope again. The Ava Kingston story also teaches us how to fight smart. Too often in life, people waste energy fighting battles that go nowhere. Screaming at closed doors. Trying to prove something to people who've already decided to misunderstand you. But Ava fought the system, not the symptoms. She didn't argue with Ethan, she hit him where it mattered, legally, financially, publicly. She didn't expose Lena's diary, she let Lena's silence convict her. She didn't try to repair her image. She let the internet do that for her by simply telling the truth. This is a lesson in resourcefulness. Ava used what she had: knowledge, strategy, documentation, narrative control. She didn't need weapons. She had wisdom. In a world obsessed with instant reactions, Ava reminded us that slow revenge is not just more satisfying, it's more permanent. But perhaps the most meaningful lesson of all comes in the final moments of her story, the aftermath. Ava didn't let revenge define her. She didn't live in the shadow of what they did. She rose above it. She built a new life. Not as an escape, but as a testament. She chose peace, not to forget, but because peace is the ultimate power move. The ability to live well, to thrive, to build without rage pulsing through your veins, that's real freedom. Ava's success wasn't in winning the case or going viral. It was in showing up for herself after the dust settled. It was in rebuilding her life with joy and elegance and an unapologetic sense of self. She didn't become a cautionary tale. She became a blueprint. And that's what makes this story so transformative. It's not a fantasy. It's not a clean-cut victory wrapped in a bow. It's messy. It's painful. It's full of gray areas. But it's real. It reflects how betrayal doesn't have to define you. How anger can be a tool instead of a poison. How silence can be louder than noise. And how your worth is not determined by who chooses you, but by who you become after they don't. So what do we take from Ava's journey? We take the reminder that you are allowed to collapse, but not forever. You are allowed to rage, but not rot in it. You are allowed to lose everything and still rise. You are allowed to rewrite the story, even when they try to steal the pen. Because your power isn't in how perfectly you love. It's in how gracefully you recover when love fails you. Because your worth isn't in the ring they never gave you. It's in the empire you build without it. Because the best revenge is not making them hurt. It's making sure they never get to be part of the life you were always meant to live.